So in this video, I'm going to give you a short little pointer for playing against each of the fighters in Unmatched. So this is going to be all 20 fighters released up to Deadpool. We haven't seen enough of Battle of Legends Volume 2 yet for me to give you any type of advice on those. So this is just going to be a short little blurb about each character and just a few little things about playing against them that may help you do better. I'm going to go down the list of all of them alphabetically. So we're going to start with Alice. When you're playing against Alice, you want Alice to be small and not big. Most of Alice's attacks have after combat effects that will change her size back. There's a few exceptions, but most of them do. When Alice is big, you really don't want to play cards that cancel her effects because you want her to become small. If she is small and attacking you, they're probably trying to get big via card effects, so you want to cancel those. And also most all of the attacks from the Jabberwock are something that you would want to feint. For Angel, most of Angel's attacks really don't have big effects that you want to bother canceling. That is unlike his sidekick Faith, who does have some effects on her cards, so you would much rather play your feints against her. The big thing with Beowulf is rage. You're eventually going to have to attack Beowulf and give him some rage, so you just need to be smart about when you do it. You probably want to attack him when he's lower on rage so that he can't take full advantage of his defense cards. He's going to come at you with his attack cards full of rage no matter what. If you have schemes that do any type of auto damage, you want to play those while he has all of his rage. That way you're not giving him any more and you're still dealing the damage. My advice for playing against Bigfoot is don't play against Bigfoot. Oh, you want some actual real advice? The Jackalope can cause you a lot of trouble with the auto damage from his cards, so taking him out before he can deal that to you is good. Getting rid of the Jackalope means that Bigfoot also has to come out to you to his zone, which will help kind of negate his special ability with the card draw. If you have multiple fighters, you can spread them around the board, and that will also make it very difficult for him to get that extra card draw. The way that Bruce Lee will beat you is by chaining a bunch of Jeet Kune Do attacks together and coming after you in a big string of attacks. Your best defenses against Jeet Kune Do strings are going to be cards that cancel effects like feint and any type of card that gives you movement so that you're not adjacent for the next one to be played. Additionally, Bruce Lee has relatively low health and does not have any healing. So if you have a surplus of defense cards that deal any type of defensive damage, you may want to consider just running right up to Bruce Lee, hitting him once with an attack and staying adjacent to bait him into an attack where you can then deal a bunch of defensive damage to you, which depending on your hero you may be able to heal from where he can't. Buffy's big thing is going to be mobility, being able to move through fighters, opposing fighters just like they were friendly ones, and also movement by card effects. She also has a lot of defensive damage that she can do by card effect, so playing attack cards that give you some after combat movement can help negate that. You want to play differently with both of her sidekicks. Giles would be a good idea to go ahead and take out pretty quickly before he ends up playing his scheme cards, because those scheme cards can cause you some trouble. Remember that Xander has some extra attack cards, so the chances of him being able to defend are going to be a bit better than Giles. Deadpool has 30 unique cards in his deck, which is going to make him very random and unpredictable. One thing that will not be unpredictable and will be a constant is Deadpool's health and Deadpool's healing on his special ability. The best way to attack him is going to be anything that will allow you to do a lot of damage in one turn. If you just end up doing like 1 damage to him on your turn, he's just going to run up and attack you and get his health back. So you need anything that will have big single attacks or anything that can chain a bunch of different attacks together. Dracula is greatly diminished if his sisters aren't around. He can replace them, but they are still worth getting off the board as a number of his card effects have to involve them. Also, just really familiarizing yourself with his deck so you have an idea when beast form is coming out is important, because that is the one card that he has that can unexpectedly end the game. With the InGen deck or the Muldoon deck, you need to not be scared of the traps if you have a lot of health. If it's early in the game or later in the game and you still have a lot of health, don't be afraid to just set off the traps. You got to get them out of the way. One way a lot of people get around them is if they have a single sidekick with a lot of health, is to use their sidekick instead of their hero to set off the traps. He can replace all of his workers really easily, so don't focus too much on them, as he's got 2 cards that let him replace all of them. Invisible Man can be a really frustrating one to deal with because how easily he can jump around the board. A few things that you can think of is not to keep yourself really near his fog tokens so that he can't suddenly jump and appear near you. When you have chances to move his fog tokens, which some of his cards will do, go ahead and push his fog tokens closer together so that the area that he can move around in is smaller. If you're able to pin Invisible Man in and separate him from his fog tokens, you really need to attack him very, very quickly, because he can bring his fog tokens back, and he also has other cards that let him jump and go to his fog tokens or completely disappear off the board. So you have to take advantage of that nearly immediately there. Jekyll Hyde is a character that boosting to make a sudden unexpected attack can be really useful against. Because of the nature of that deck that is split between the 2 of them, there's a lot of cards that they won't be able to play at any given point. Anytime that you attack Jekyll Hyde and end up sitting next to them, make sure that you have some very good defense cards, because they can change over to Hyde really quickly and hurt you a lot. Whenever King Arthur boosts a card, you always know that you can cancel that with a feint or other card that cancels abilities. Just remember that most people, when they play King Arthur, are going to boost cards that have effects that they don't mind as getting feinted as much, because they know that boosting a card will kind of draw a feint into it. And so you're going to be tempted to use those on a lot of his boosts, and depending on your health situation, you may need to, but you may also want to consider using those feints on Merlin, because Merlin has some pretty crazy stuff that he can do. Taking out Merlin early in the game can be extremely useful for you there, because a lot of Arthur's power comes through Merlin. One thing to be aware of is that because Merlin has so many cards in the deck, if you take out Merlin really early in the game, you are giving Arthur a bunch of other cards to use as boost fodder. If Little Red can get the symbols to line up on her cards, she stands a very good chance of beating you. So you don't want those cards to line up. So the biggest things that you can do to mess that up is any type of card that makes her discard, especially if that's something that can happen during or after combat. If you're defending, your after combat effects will resolve before hers, and if you can make her discard a card, now her symbol may not line up for the after combat effect of the card that she was playing. The Huntsman doesn't have really good defenses, and all of Little Red's healing is done through the Huntsman. So if you have an opportunity to take him out early in the game, it is probably worth your while. Also, just be aware anytime that she has a wild on the top of her basket, because any card that she plays is going to have all of its effects. To really be able to attack Medusa, you're going to have to hang out of her zone and then jump in there and attack her. To do that, you're probably going to have to boost to do that. So you need to be prepared to hang outside her zone and then boost in there to attack her. You need to always make sure anytime that you run in there that you have some defense cards, because Gaze of Stone could potentially end your game if you don't have a defense. You don't need to run in, sit yourself next to Medusa in her zone and not have a couple of defense cards handy. The Raptors are strongest when there are 3 of them. When they go down in number, they lose a lot of their ability to go after you. They're less mobile with 2 of them there, so they can't trap you or show up and surprise you as easy, and they also start losing a little bit of the bonus from their special ability. So taking out and focusing on one specific raptor and making sure you take that one out is really going to be your best strategy against them. Robin Hood's outlaws can really be a pain to you. They've got a lot of cards that let them do some crazy stuff. You really want to try to get rid of them early, because Robin Hood is not going to be as well protected and won't be able to attack you as easily without his outlaws. Yes, he can bring them back, but I think of the multi-sidekick characters, I think that Robin Hood is one of the ones that is the most diminished without them. The biggest things that Sherlock Holmes is going to be able to do to you is make you discard cards in your hand and make you take damage from boost values on cards that you're discarding. Whenever you get a big card, you probably want to use it fairly quickly against Sherlock, because you don't want him playing a card that will make you lose it. You don't want to keep a lot of cards with high boost values in your hand. You actually probably want to keep a lower number of cards in your hand, which may change your play style a lot and makes a number of pairings against him be kind of bad. Watson has quite a bit that he can do. That's also where most of Holmes' healing comes from, is through Watson. So getting him gone will help you a lot. You don't want Sinbad to build up steam and make it through the later stages of the game. If Sinbad stays around for a long game, you stand much less of a chance of defeating him. So you want to get at him very early and try to hit him really early. Don't leave yourself in situations where he can just run up to you all the time and hit you with voyages early in the game. Those early voyages don't have a lot of power behind them, so he's going to want to play them pretty quickly so that he can power up those other voyages. So attack him early and don't leave yourself open to just be attacked all the time. For playing against Spike, your best strategy is going to be to pick any other fighter and play against him. Oh wait, you want some actual advice for playing against Spike? Well, Spike and Dracula, all of their biggest card effects happen if either they or the opposing fighter are on the shadow tokens. They can only place those shadow tokens adjacent to those 2 fighters. So don't go in up there, right up there next to Spike or Dracula. Make them come after you so that they can't put those shadow tokens out there. Then they'll just be playing cards with no card effects. And our last fighter on the list alphabetically is Willow. A few things to think about here is that you want Willow to not be Dark Willow a whole lot. That's where her strongest power will come from. You are going to have to attack Willow at some point and turn her into Dark Willow, so don't be afraid to do that. However, you don't want to attack Tara unless Willow is already Dark Willow, because that will also make her Dark Willow, and you don't want to do that. Additionally, Willow is going to burn through a lot of her deck with all that blind boosting. So playing a game that kind of makes the game drag on and makes her burn through more of her deck is going to be a good strategy for you. And also anything that makes her have to discard more cards and burn through her deck quicker is going to be even better for you. So that's a little bit on how to play against all 20 of the current Unmatched fighters. Is there any advice that you have for any of them that you think needs to be added? Well, you could go down into the comment section and add that. You could give this video a thumbs up and a like, and that'll be helpful. And you can also take a look at the other videos that I have here on the channel so that you can see all of those.